The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
Back on the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, news, reviews, previews, and interviews with the notable topics and names in the sport of wrestling. Big news emanating out of Colorado Springs. That's a big word, Rich. Our guest, Rich Bender, emanating out of Colorado Springs. We're going to talk a little bit about Final X and what it is, what its actual name is. Is it Final X? Is it Final 10? But we'll get into all those details here in a bit. Jason Bryant here again with you with Rich Bender, Executive Director at USA Wrestling. Welcome back to the program, Rich.
Thanks, Jace. Thanks for having me, man. Looking forward to chatting with you.
Who's in my office now? So who is in my office upstairs?
Who is in your office? Well, so we've switched around a lot, and I think I would guess that it's probably Ryan Johnson is in your old office, and but you know, I guess I think that's the office you were in. Man, it's been a long time ago, but I think Ryan Johnson, who manages all of our corporate partnerships, is in that office now.
Yeah, I had the window right between Tony Black and Jamie McNabb. So between the two of them, I got a pretty good insight of when I worked there on how things were going. One thing I want to ask you on how it's going in terms of state services, as we mentioned, Tony Black and, of course, the crew there, is the Give Wrestling a Shot week. That's, as we're going right now, as we record this on January 17th, an opportunity for kids to try out the sport of wrestling without the need to buy a USA Wrestling card. And what's the staff been like with this and this idea, and how have you seen the benefits of a program like this to influence wrestling?
Well, I think anytime you can eliminate any kind of barrier for entry into your sport, you got to do it. And I think, this Give Wrestling a Shot gives our sport an opportunity to expose itself to kids and not have any barrier to entry. And I think it's been incredibly well received, and we're excited that those kids that are giving wrestling a shot are going to end up giving wrestling a chance and be a bigger part of their life.
So as let's just getting to brass tacks, I guess that I don't even know what that means. I know you're familiar with tack because you're a rodeo guy, but when we talk about the topic of this show, Final X. Okay, first of all, let's get the name. Is it Final 10 or is it Final X? Let's just get the branding out of the way first, so people are talking about it right.
It's Final X, and that X standing for 10, meaning the final 10 on our team, Final X.
There we go. Okay, so again, in case you were living under a rock for the last 24 hours, this is going to be the World Team Trials format for men's and women's freestyle. Greco is going to be part of the junior duels later in the year. But first off, we had such a great World Team Trials in Lincoln last year with some great series, best of three, great crowd, great event, great staff there at the Devaney Center. The first things first, why the change in format?
Well, don't kid yourself, Jason. We thought about that, right? We came off a really successful year. Not only had a great World Team Trials, but won the World Championships for the first time in 22 years. And certainly there was a part of me and a part of our staff that didn't want to change anything. In fact, we wanted to just go ahead and go back with the same team. And obviously, that's not the way we're structured, and not what we were going to do anyway. But I think in my mind, it's an opportunity for us to just elevate the sport of wrestling and raise the relevancy of our program. And, it all revolves around giving us an opportunity to kind of tell the story of the athletes. And, the old program was, one day. I mean, it's start to finish and it was over. And I think this new format's going to give us an opportunity to tell the story of athletes and promote matchups and just keep wrestling elevated for over the course of 3 weeks. And in the past, that's only been one weekend. So we think it's a winner. We think it's going to provide the athletes an opportunity to make a little bit more money. Obviously give the sport another opportunity to tell its story and for us to really start to build heroes and around those, or build heroes within our national team.
So as we look at the format, kind of similar in some ways, we've got the U.S. Open, that's still the big deal, but the qualifying for this Final X will come from, of course, previous medalist, U.S. Open champion, and then this challenge tournament, which is coming to Minnesota, which I'm going to honestly like because that's 90 minutes from my house. I don't have to buy a ticket. But that's May 18th, 19th, and 20th. And the concept, seems to be borrowed a little bit from what Xander Schultz and Matt Novogratz were doing with Prowl, with giving it a weekend feel. For those who are unfamiliar, there wasn't a whole lot publicized on what their format was going to be, but the original idea was 6 weekends where you'd have like a best 2 out of 3, and it would rotate around the country, 6 Sundays. Obviously there were some ideas borrowed, but when Prowl came into the fray and wished to say, hey, let this be your World Team Trials, how has it evolved since then?
Well, and to be honest, I mean, the first iteration of Prowl had nothing to do with our World Team Trials. It was originally, Prowl stood for Professional Wrestling League, and it was a concept that had nothing to do with our World Team Trials, and it started as almost a competitor of the existing Olympic Games and World Championships, and followed more along the lines of a UFC kind of promotion. And through a lot of iterations, a lot of phone calls and meetings, we started to think that it made more sense, rather than try to recreate or try to create some relevancy that didn't already exist, to use an existing program and try to use that as a foundation to build the promotion. And it's evolved, right? This whole process evolved, and obviously some really creative people like Mike Novogratz and Matt Novogratz and Xander Schultz and countless other people were involved in this. Our sport committees, our athletes, and really we've come to this conclusion that this is the best thing for us to do. So we think it's going to give us an opportunity to really, like I said earlier, keep the sport elevated for a longer time frame, and just build content around wrestling. And one of the things that we really have struggled with within the USA Wrestling market is consistent programming, right? Consistent offering, right? We have a U.S. National Championship that's a big deal, and then kind of go dark. Then we have a World Team Trials, and then kind of go dark, and then the World Championships. Where I think if you think about those sports that have had success in elevating themselves, there's consistent programming, a consistent offering, and a consistent way for you to expose your sport to a broader sports community. And I think this starts to do it. Now, is 3 weeks enough? Probably not, but I think it's certainly better than a one-day format. And I think the thing that I'm really excited about is that window of opportunity we now have to really dig deep and tell the stories of these athletes. Now obviously, we're talking about 2 athletes per weight class, but in the past it was we didn't know who was going to be in that final match up until that day, and so there's a lot of responsibility on our partners to help us tell that story, and so we're excited about it.
Yeah, and just for those who are trying to weed through the press release, let's just put it down in basic terms. Your returning world medalist and your U.S. Open champion, they're in the Final X. They are not wrestling the challenge tournament. They are in the best 2 of 3 series at 3 locations, which we will probably get to here in a moment. We're starting off there, correct, right?
Well, let me just clarify. The only athletes right now that are guaranteed to be in the final wrestle-off are our returning medalists from last year's World Championship, period. Right? And obviously, in those weight classes where we don't have a returning, a reigning world medalist, the U.S. Open champ will then go to that spot. So that after the U.S. Open, there'll be 10 of the 20 athlete spots confirmed. So from the U.S. Open, from now until that final wrestle-offs, we know that the athletes that are competing in the weight classes that they won the World Championships in are buyed first, I guess is the right term, to that final wrestle-off. And in those weight classes where we don't have an athlete, let's say example 61 kilos, at the whoever wins the U.S. Open will be put in that spot. And that'll just a best 2 out of 3 against the athlete that comes through the challenge tournament.
Now, and then we're also going with the 10 weight classes, so we've got a little different format. We're adding some things. We've got 4, 3, and 3, and of course, you got a guy like Jaden Cox, who's a world medalist at 86, has already made no bones about it. He's going to go up to 92. And the women, it was written in there. So the same process. If Jaden Cox is not going to get a bye through to the Final X because he's moving weight classes.
That's correct. He wins the U.S. Open. He'll be sitting out until June 23rd, which is the date that we've picked for 92 kilos, and he'll. I mean, whoever wins the U.S. Open at 92 kilos will be that athlete sitting in that spot.
So locations and dates. We've got the Challenge Tournament, of course, the U.S. Open, end of April. Then a couple weeks later, we go into Rochester, Minnesota for the Challenge Tournament, and then June 9th, June 16th, June 23rd. How much discussion or contention in some cases were there with like the Athletes Council and the respective club coaches about number of dates, who was going where, the distance between April, May, and June weigh-ins, because we've got the same day weigh-in with the World Championships and things of that nature. So where was the contention, and where was I guess more of the compromises made to iron down 3 dates, 3 locations?
Well, I mean, I tell you, it's really interesting because there wasn't a lot of contention. I don't know that we had much, if any, contention within the sport committees and the athletes that were involved in the process of that. I mean, I think there's been awesome buy-in by the athletes and our sport committees to the concept, and I think they're excited about having the opportunity to really have their stories told and be able to lay it all on the line in just a 2 out of 3 format one night to make the team. So I wouldn't say there was a lot of contention. Obviously, we were, as we start to finalize these cities, there's probably a little selfishness involved in our part to try to put athletes in those athletes that we knew had qualified in spots where we thought that there was a following, and places like Lincoln, Nebraska. Obviously, I think a reasonable person would think it probably makes sense for Jordan Burroughs and James Green to be in that promotion. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out when talking about locations like Lincoln, Nebraska, or State College, or Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and where there's connections to a community. So that's been part of the factor, but not a lot of contentions, conversations about that. I think the athletes are excited about it.
Now, you've spoken on locations, and I'm guessing you haven't drawn those 3 locations out of a hat because it's the preliminary places look like that. Devaney Center would again host, and I'm assuming Rec Hall and Grace Hall, or are we looking at Rec Hall and Stabler at Bethlehem?
Well, I think in Bethlehem we're still working out some details. We like the bigger location because we just think it's it's the right promotion for that location, and we think we're going to be able to draw some bigger crowds there. So you can I guess interpret that as you'd like, but I think that we're leaning towards the bigger facility.
Now, as we get towards these events, there's been, I guess, the backlash and essentially has been from a fan perspective. If you're gauging the tone on the message boards and on social media, the questions like, well, how do they expect fans to travel three weeks in a row? And of course, the idea, at least, is to put more events, more places, so more fans around the country could see them. We've heard that first with the national duels, try to do the same thing. Now, where's the mindset from that office about, okay, instead of making a one grandiose weekend event, we've got 3 events, but the fan from Pennsylvania will have to travel to see Jordan Burroughs and vice versa.
Yeah, so Jason, I think in all due respect to those that kind of naysayers to that, I mean, we do pay attention to demographics of fans, and have found that our of the 4,000 or 5,000 people that showed up in Lincoln, Nebraska, the majority of those weren't from the Midwest or outside of a driving distance. So in terms of there'll be some, certainly, and we will encourage that. The diehard wrestling fans that will travel and want to see all 3 events, but we think it just provides us with a great opportunity to expose the sport to just 3 times as many people, because our sport is geographically driven, and when it comes to consuming our sport or attending events, right? Our wrestling community isn't, known to jump on the airplane a lot, and certainly there are some. I'm not making light of the fact that there are some that travel great distances to consume and watch our sport, and that will be the case here. There'll be some, I'm sure, that will travel to 3 different locations to see the best wrestlers on the planet struggle to make our team, for sure. But our focus is going to be around promotion in these geographic locations and trying to build an attendance in all three locations that will, we hope, triple what we had in one location last year.
Now, while we haven't officially put pen to paper on this one, I've talked to the events department, and I'm in a situation where I'll be fortunate enough to be there on the microphone for that. But as an independent media outlet, if I wasn't, this would be a struggle to cover because, wrestling media outlets, save Flo, who is involved in the production and streaming of this, and the in-house at themat.com, it's going to be an opportunity for local media outlets in those respective markets to get additional coverage, but it does kind of hamper some of the wrestling-specific media. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, certainly. I think it does present a challenge for, the Jason Bryants of the world that, are going to cover now 3 events, not just one. We think that there are going to be 3 events that are going to be easier for you to cover. We think they're going to have more. You're going to have more backstory on who's competing, and a lot of your work I think is going to be done. And I think, we think the Dying the Wool wrestling media are going to enjoy these events more than work them. And I think that's another I think benefit of this is we know that there's people in this industry that it's a job for them, but there's a lot more guys like you that are just true wrestling fans, and we think that this promotion is going to be better for you. I mean, we think you're going to have more background information on who's wrestling, more in a more comfortable timeline to write and present the story, because it's one night and it's not we're not going to ask fans to be in a facility for 6 hours. It's hopefully a couple hours and we've got the job done, and I think the stories to tell. That's I think the big part.
And in talking with Xander and Maddie a little bit and Paris about just kind of the concept when they were kicking it around back in August, one of the key was that time frame. When people want to come to a wrestling event, they don't. That's what's hurting us at the high school level is so many of these events that you're spending 6, 8, 10 hours in a gym. You're not attracting new fans. Whereas you get, okay, hey, come see. We got anywhere from 8 to 14 matches in some cases. My math may be terribly off, but you've got a 2-hour window that you can cram it in there. From a promotion standpoint, you worked in events for a long time prior to assuming the role you have now, but a 2-hour window seems a lot more likely for the walk-up fan. Is that kind of what you're hoping with as well?
Absolutely, and there's tons of data and research that will tell you that when it comes to not just wrestling, but any sporting event, and if you've been to any of the top rodeos around the world, the National Finals Rodeo, it's a strict 2-hour window, and there's tons of research and data to show you that that's the right amount of time to hold people's attention, and to kind of build a following around a specific event or promotion. So I think we're going to have a difficult time in a couple of these locations. When we go to a third match, probably when 7 weight classes of getting that done within a strict 2-hour time frame. But yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to. We're trying to elevate the sport of wrestling, and we for too long have not paid attention to our fans, right? And we just assume everybody like us loves wrestling. We don't have a problem sitting in a gym for 8 hours. But I think the sport now is consumed by more wrestling, I guess, Dying the Wool fans than ever before, maybe. But in terms of us going to the next level or thinking a little bit outside the box, we've got to start to appeal to a broader audience. And, we think this is going to give us an opportunity to do that. At the end of the day, right, it's may fail miserably. I don't think so, but, we're going to take some swings at it, and we're going to, make the investment and the effort. And, if we have some success, we think there's some future iterations of this that will help us kind of reimagine how we present our sport and our elite athletes. And you didn't say anything about it, but athletes are going to get paid too. They're going to there's a financial incentive on top of the existing stipend program and medal fund program that athletes are going to earn a little extra cash to participate in these as well. So there's a lot of upside.
Yeah, I hadn't gotten to that point yet, but that was one thing that I know Xander's been open about on social media here in the last 48 hours about the responses. Their idea was to create a pro league to pay the athletes more, and What type of payment situations are going to be in place so that it's beyond just the national team stipend and the price of winning the U.S. Open?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that there's going to be $100,000+ that's going to be distributed through this program, and we haven't just raised the level of the water in the pool for the men's freestyle program. The women in freestyle and Greco as well are going to benefit from this promotion. So there's financial incentive. I mean, if you're a reigning world champion, I mean, you can make $7,000+ more. That is on top of what you would have made in the old system. So, there's going to be I guess the right term is an amount to show. So in other words, if you qualify for the promotion, you're going to get paid, and that wasn't the case in the past. And this is all resources on top of the existing USA Wrestling stipend program for being on our team or winning the World Championships or winning the U.S. Open. This is all on top of that. So it's up to over $110,000.
As we move forward, you had mentioned Greco and women. Last year, women was neither Greco or women were involved in the Lincoln site. They kind of did their own thing, and now the women are back with the freestyle, and then there's Greco's going to do its own thing with the junior duels. So how are those conversations with Matt Lindland, Terry Steiner, and Bill Zadok to say, hey, we want to do this. Who's involved? Who's in? I mean, because maybe some outsiders may view that Greco feel like they may be getting shafted here.
Yeah, so complete buy-in, and Matt Lindland has a specific agenda and idea and program that he's employing to take our team back to the top on the Greco side, and that is, I think, he has a specific agenda to not make it an either-or proposition for elite athletes to wrestle freestyle or Greco, and I think this concept and the way this promotion's laying out is, there might be some guys on the freestyle side that now consider wrestling Greco, and not to disrespect those Greco only guys right now, but we think that also strengthens the pool and makes our program better. So that Matt is 100% on board with this idea, and obviously the women are in right alongside with the men, and there's literally no difference in terms of the commitment or the promotion around men's freestyle, women's freestyle. It's the same. They're in the same promotion. Obviously, different weight classes, different cities, but they're going to be promoted just the same way as the men.
We talked about expanding it and giving the fans in 3 different locations around the country to have an opportunity to see our best, our elite, our world and Olympic hopefuls, our world medalists, our Olympic champions, and things like that. But in the past, having worked there and having spent time doing television with. We had Fox College Sports at one time, the NBC Olympic family, of course, the Olympic trials are on the NBC networks, and now this one just on Flow and streaming, so no television, only streaming. What was the idea behind that?
Well, I mean, in our World Team Trial process and we made the decision to partner with Flow a while ago, and we went to Flow with this idea of kind of strengthening their investment in the sport of wrestling. And, so, it was an idea that, we think is a winner. And, ultimately, does this play on linear television and a tape delay? I don't know. Those are things that certainly are part of ongoing discussions. But for right now, we're, this promotion will be on the Flow platform. And then 72 hours obviously reverts back into USA Wrestling controlled content. So it's for right now will be distributed live exclusively on Flow.
Now that brings up a question in terms of not about Flow by specifics, but about how the trials process works and changes. Is there a mandate from the USOC on how NGBs are supposed to conduct their trials? Just give us a little bit of background on how much flexibility USA Wrestling has in tweaking the format from year to year.
So, the Amateur Sports Act requires us to work through a process to determine who represents the United States in protected competitions. And the World Championships is obviously a protected competition. The Olympic Games is a protected competition. The Pan American Games is an Olympic competition. So, anytime that we are selecting teams that will represent the United States in these competitions, we're obligated to go through a process by which that includes an internal process within USA Wrestling with our sport committees that's required to have a X amount of athlete input and support, and then ultimately USOC and through their processes approve our procedures and just to ensure that it's following a logical process. So really every athlete has a chance to make the team. So I mean, we work really hard to eliminate as much subjective criteria in the process as we possibly can. And, I think that's one of the beauties of our sport. And I think, we're not a team sport where, there's some subject criteria that goes into, who makes the best team. I mean, I think one of the great things about our sport is that we're pretty transparent, right? You win the trials, you're on the team. And, I think that's one of the things the USOC really likes about our process. And, that doesn't mean that there isn't certain opportunities for us to get crossways or to have disputes about the process. But, when it's written into your criteria, and this is written into the criteria of all Olympic sports, that field of play decisions by a referee is not up for debate. And then you can, focus specifically on a process that's fair and transparent. I mean, I think you're in pretty good shape there in terms of, having everybody feel like, hey, this gives everybody a chance. And I think this new process, right, I think we heard it loud and clear from a lot of athletes that weren't in that proven performer position, i.e. a reigning world medalist, that, you wrestle a mini tournament and then have to go 2 out of 3 against a guy. That's really an unfair. I mean, it's not unfair, but I mean, it just creates a little bit of a challenge for someone to knock off somebody like that. And that there's intent there, right? I mean, I mean, at the end of the day, the process is trying to select a team that's going to give us the best chance to win. And we have, right? Statistics will show you that, if you win once, you have a good chance of winning again. So, right, we try to eliminate that kind of fluke process where, somebody could have something fluky happen and maybe it's not the best wrestler representing the United States. I mean, we try to look at all those things, but I think this process addresses that extra burden placed on the challenger, and really, I think we're going to walk away from this process with the very best team we could. So, yeah, we're really optimistic about this whole process.
Now, one thing I do want to get a little bit more insight on, and this is about the event prior with the challenge tournament. Now, who's eligible to compete in the challenge tournament? Is it just placers from the U.S. Open, or is this kind of like an open challenge?
Well, and so Jason, in complete transparency, I'm probably not Cody Bickley is who you should have on next in this call to talk about the specific criteria who qualifies for the challenge tournament. But there are ways outside of just the U.S. Open to qualify for the challenge tournament. And where, what we will do is the U.S. Open will have a big influence on that challenge tournament. The challenge tournament finals will be 2 out of 3. So the winner of the challenge tournament will have to win 2 out of 3 against in the finals to make it to the final X.
Okay, because there's people wondering, obviously Jordan Oliver's suspension will end just after the U.S. Open, and while not specifically relating to him on this question, it's a big portion of people's thinking is he going to be eligible to be in the field? So basically, what you're saying is there seems to be there is a possibility out there.
No, let me just make sure there's no misunderstanding about that. And there's a criteria set right now for athletes to not have to go to the U.S. Open and qualify. That was set a long time ago in terms of what that criteria is. And i.e., if you're a former world team member, you qualify. And so, no, there's not. I mean, after the U.S. Open, if your question is after the U.S. Open, is there a way to qualify? The answer is no.
Okay, so a wild card, for example, is not.
Yeah, no, that was that. I mean, that's not been part of the process, and contrary to some people's belief, has nothing to do with Jordan Oliver, right? This has absolutely nothing to do with Jordan Oliver in terms of why these rules are in place. And obviously, Jordan Oliver is a unbelievably talented stud that we'd love to have in this promotion and love to have in our process. But unfortunately, I mean, the timing just it's just unfortunate, and that's all I can say about it. It has nothing to do with anybody's intent to keep somebody out of the process, because believe me, it's in USA Wrestling's best interest for Jordan Oliver to be in this process. Now, whether he makes the team or not, obviously that's the beauty of wrestling. You win, you're on the team, and unfortunately, there's just some timing issues around the USADA violation that kept him from being in this promotion.
Okay, so as far as the question goes, he for sure will not be in it, just because again, the calendar is his enemy.
Right. I think so. It's really difficult for me to publicly say, "Hey, absolutely set in stone." There's no way, because I don't think anyone could make that absolute guarantee, because I believe there's processes in place for appeals, et cetera. But as the way the process was approved and set in play by the U.S. Olympic Committee, that's the way it is.
I don't want to beat Jordan up too much on this, because obviously he's taking his suspension. He's going to deal with it. Now, moving on with other events on the calendar, just briefly, we're going to have a busy year in the United States. We got these 3 events. Pete Isaias and his crew in the events department are going to be just running ragged. You got the World Cup coming to Iowa City, and it's been a great facility. Carver Hawkeye has been a tremendous facility and host for the last 2 Olympic trials. How excited are you to be able to host the World Cup in Iowa City after having it in LA the last several years?
Well, I mean, and I think, and I'll offend a ton of people by saying this, but if you don't think that there's a heartbeat for the sport of wrestling in Iowa City, Iowa, then you have been under a rock, as you said, for a long time. And I think, any time that we have the opportunity to expose international wrestling to that fan base, we need to do it. And I think, this is going to present a great opportunity for those fans around that program to consume, a kind of a different part of our sport. And I mean, the infrastructure is in place there for us to have, huge crowds. Obviously, the University of Iowa is a fantastic partner of USA Wrestling's, and and we're excited to bring this product to them. I mean, it's anytime you can assemble the 8 best wrestling teams in the world and throw them in front of a crowd of 13,000 people. I mean, I think it's exciting, and I think the good news is we're really good too, and our team's good, and we're expecting to do really well there competitively, and so hopefully we'll give that fan base a lot of things to cheer about.
We finally get to combine 2 of the sport's great fan bases, because with the news that Iran will be coming, so we were worried about not having them because of their fans, and now you're going to put them in Carver Hawkeye. Oh boy, this could be just, I don't think a bunch of Hawkeye fans are going to be rooting for Team USA are going to take kindly to Iranians out cheering them. So that's the challenge laid before Hawkeye Nation and I guess those that are coming for Team USA that week.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in saying that. I don't know that that's ever happened at Carver Hawkeye where visiting fan base came in and took over, and I don't think that's going to be the case here either. And certainly we're pleased that Iran, I mean, obviously had a bad couple days in Paris last year, but we all know for sure that by any sense of your imagination, Iran is one of the top teams in the world, and we want to wrestle the best, and we want to beat the best, and so we're excited to welcome them here to the United States and into hopefully a really ruckus environment in Carver Hawkeye.
All right, I do got one question to ask as we circle back to Paris and the 2017 World Championships. In the range of the birth of your children notwithstanding, where does that World Championship on the men's freestyle stack up as one of the great accomplishments that you've been able to witness in your life?
Well, certainly. I mean, it's up there, right? Talking about your faith, family, and different things, but in terms of accomplishments by the organization and by our athletes, it's right up there. Had the pleasure of being around all the other freestyle world championships that we've won. Actually, been around all the world championships that we've won as a team, whether that with our women or with our men's Greco-Roman team in '93, '95, and now this past year with our men's freestyle team. I mean, I think few times in life do when you have this anticipation of something possibly happening, i.e., the Sadulayev Snyder matchup, and the fact that it came down, that came to fruition, and the fact that it came to not only fruition that match actually was going to take place against which a lot of people think are the two best wrestlers in the world. I mean, to have the team score tied in that environment in a former or a future Olympic city. I mean, and the way that and the match didn't disappoint, right? You saw it. I mean, it was a lot of times those big matchups, and that's why I think you hear a lot of people say, hey, if you want to see the best wrestling, go to the semifinals, not the finals, because athletes tend to tighten up a little bit in those big moments, and that wasn't the case in this final. And it came right down to the last 12 seconds, and actually came down to the last seconds, right? I mean, Sedgelev got in on Kyle late, and even after Kyle took him down. And when you pour that all into the fact that we've been working so hard to beat the Russians and to beat them in that environment, and to see the culmination of the collaborative effort and spirit of the American wrestling community around our team. And I say that it's not about USA Wrestling. It's about our regional training centers. It's about the thousands of volunteers that bust their butt every day to help give individual wrestlers an opportunity to participate on that stage, and then to see those athletes embrace that. I'm getting the hair on the back of my neck standing up right now thinking about it. It's the purest pursuit in all of sport is an American wrestler trying to win a medal for its country. And you've heard me say that before, Jason. It's not, they're not inspired by fame or fortune. They're inspired by just that innate desire to be the best. And to see that all come together and have Kyle Snyder be able to finish that takedown and win, and for our coaches and staff and volunteers and athletes that have just busted their butt for that. Vince Lombardi said a long time ago, right? It's the individual commitment to a group effort that makes organizations, teams, and and companies great. And that was the culmination of that, right? That was an individual effort by a lot of people to a group, an individual commitment to a group effort. And that came. So to answer your question, is up there. If it's not the highlight, it's there. Obviously, had the pleasure of being around some other really incredible individual accomplishments, like Kyle and Helen and Jordan and Rulon but when you think about just the enormity of this whole moment, and there's a lot of moving parts. A lot of things could go right a different way, right? Lose one of the matches that we won in the wrestlebacks didn't win, or if somebody doesn't place ninth, and we still don't win. Because at the end of the day, the only difference between whether we won that match or lost that match was one team point. So this wasn't. Obviously Kyle Snyder had the weight of the world on his shoulders, and right, he's the guy you want to put the weight on, right? He's the stud. But right, every other one of those athletes that participated, had they not come through in all their matches the way they did, we wouldn't have been there. So yeah, it was cool, and something I think that will be the highlight of me when looking back, talking to my grandkids, of my career at USA Wrestling.
And you had to slide in a Packer quote in there somewhere, didn't you? You just couldn't resist, could you, Rich?
Well, that's about all I can do right now with our Packers. But
yeah, how are they doing next? Or who are they playing this week?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, that's right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this interview is about done, Stud.
Pretty much. All right, Rich Bender, thanks. Information, of course, on the Final X can be found at themat.com, and of course on flowwrestling.org. Again, those dates: June 9th, June 16th, June 23rd. Tentative lineups. We didn't have come out and said that there's a release for these things yet, but Lincoln State College, Bethlehem, in that order. As far as wait for the official release on that from USA Wrestling. I'm sure you can see that on all their social media platforms. Rich, thanks for the time and the clarifications on the questions that people have about Final X.
Well, the lines are always open here at USA Wrestling. 719-598-8181 is our office number, and if anybody has any questions or concerns, we're always happy to hear them. My email address is rbender@usawrestling.org, and certainly, we get better as a sport because we have input from a lot of different people. And if you just want to complain, then I guess you can send that too. But if you have some ideas or ways for us to manage some things better or make some changes for the betterment of our sport, we're happy to hear them. And just, Jason, appreciate your passion for our specific programs, and more importantly, your passion for wrestling and the role that you play within our sport. I think it's safe to say that American wrestling is better promoted and talked about than any other wrestling program on the planet as a result of the partners that we have that care about our sport. So thank you for that, and just God bless you, and look forward to seeing everybody in June.
The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. First time listening? Well, you can change that by going to MattTalkOnline.com/GetShortTime to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or listen on your favorite podcatcher at MattTalkOnline.com/listen.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.